When Tiffany Lee faced trial for the murder of her ex-boyfriend, the media quickly dubbed her the Hillsborough Heiress. Born into a family of real estate moguls, Tiffany's fortune was estimated in the tens, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars. In the spring of 2016, the father of her 2 children mysteriously vanished. The couple had endured months of bitter disputes over money, and Tiffany was the last person known to have seen him alive. I'm Kevin, and welcome to my channel. This case presents a perplexing puzzle. Initial evidence pointed firmly in one direction, but as new details surfaced, an entirely different narrative began to take shape. Let's delve deeper. On Friday, April 29, 2016, a hiker patrolling Golden Gate Park in San Francisco stumbled upon a discarded cell phone along a trail. The device belonged to 27-year-old culinary student and devoted father of 2, Keith Green. Keith had left his Millbrae apartment the night before around 9 p.m., leaving behind his car keys and wallet. For 6 months prior, he had been staying with family friend Angela Dunn, following his breakup with Tiffany Lee, the mother of his children. Angela revealed that Keith was scheduled to meet Tiffany that night to discuss custody arrangements for their daughters, Vivian and Nia, aged 4 and 2. When Keith left, he was casually dressed in dark sweatpants, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Their plan was a brief conversation in the parking lot of the Pancake House restaurant just across the street, which had already closed for the day. After that meeting, Keith vanished without a trace. He was reported missing the following day. The park where the phone was found lies about a 30-minute drive north from the Pancake House toward the Golden Gate Bridge. In the weeks that followed, desperate friends and family plastered flyers around Millbrae and San Francisco, hoping for any clue about Keith's fate. On May 11th, Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies discovered a body in a field off Highway 101 near Geyserville. This location was another 2-hour drive north from Golden Gate Park. It had been 2 weeks since Keith was last seen alive. Identification was confirmed through dental records. 1 week later, officials officially announced the remains belonged to Keith Green. At the scene, Keith was found wearing only his socks. His front teeth were broken, and the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the neck. His cell phone had been left unattended the morning after back in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. The fact that he left his car and wallet behind deepened the investigators' suspicions. Evidence collected from the scene and on Keith's person became crucial to the homicide investigation. Keith and Tiffany met in 2009 and soon moved into a $7 million mansion in Hillsborough, bought for Tiffany by her mother. Their whirlwind romance masked a stark contrast in backgrounds. Up to that point, their lives had followed very different trajectories. Born in Beijing, Tiffany grew up in Silicon Valley, attending elite schools and preparing to join the family empire. She earned a master's degree in business from the University of San Francisco. After graduation, Tiffany took a lucrative role managing her family's real estate portfolio, earning $100,000 a year. Her mother, Li Jihong, had built the family fortune in Beijing during the 1980s through ventures with construction firms owned by the Chinese military. The family's holdings included massive real estate assets with 2 high-rises in Beijing and multiple Bay Area properties. By 2016, Tiffany estimated their wealth to be between $50 and $100 million. Outside estimates suggested the family fortune was even greater. Keith Green hailed from a working-class neighborhood near Silicon Valley. His parents divorced early, and he was primarily raised by his mother, Colleen. Keith excelled as a young athlete. He was a celebrated high school quarterback and quickly made friends. After dropping out of college, Keith drifted between unemployment and temporary jobs, but meeting Tiffany offered him a new path. Li Jihong covered the $40,000 annual tuition for Keith to attend Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School in San Francisco, where he was set to graduate that September. Keith and Tiffany welcomed their daughters in 2012 and 2014. Their Hillsborough home was staffed with nannies, housekeepers, and landscapers. They enjoyed luxury cars and SUVs, symbols of their affluent life. For over 6 years, their existence seemed nearly flawless. On May 3rd, less than a week after Keith disappeared, Tiffany sent an email to the Hillsborough Police Department voicing her concern. Though she initially suspected Keith's disappearance was a ploy to extort money, she soon accepted that he was truly in danger. Her chilling words hinted at the uncertainty gripping her mind. Tiffany reached out to the police with a plea for help, asking if they could provide information on placing a billboard to aid in finding Keith Green. Her words carried an urgent tone, hinting at trouble beneath the surface. On that very day, Tiffany also contacted Keith's mother, Colleen, attempting to bridge a growing divide by expressing genuine concern over Keith's disappearance. In a heartfelt message to Colleen, Tiffany acknowledged the suspicion directed at her, but insisted on her own worry despite the strained relationship between them. The following day, the police summoned Tiffany to the station, inviting her to speak directly with detectives about the case. The tangled history between Tiffany and Keith had ended 6 months prior to his murder, leaving wounds that had yet to heal. Keith had uncovered Tiffany's affair with a close friend of his, Kavy Byatt, who was rumored to be his marijuana supplier as well. When the affair became public knowledge, Tiffany moved Kavy into the mansion, forcing Keith to leave. The atmosphere between them grew thick with tension, a volatile mix of betrayal and resentment. Tiffany and Kavy flaunted their new relationship without shame, buying a Ferrari to celebrate, and even giving him the nickname Daddy to the two girls. As Tiffany and Kavy settled into their family life, conflicts with Keith escalated, marked by the cruel irony of their young daughter doing donuts in a car, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Tiffany secretly recorded phone calls with Keith and acquaintances who were dragged into the heated disputes. In one chilling exchange, Keith threatened Kavy's life, abruptly ending the call with a menacing promise, "I'm gonna kill you." In the recordings, Tiffany confronted Keith, confirming his threats and challenging him directly. She insisted on capturing the conversation, ensuring every word was documented. With a steely resolve, she pressed him to admit to planning harm against Kavy, recording his responses for evidence. When asked for motives, the conversation turned to another friend, Ethan, revealing the tangled network of involvement. Their exchanges were laced with insults and threats, a toxic mix fueled by anger and desperation. Central to many arguments was the issue of money, a recurring and corrosive theme. Keith, struggling as a culinary student in San Francisco, found it increasingly difficult to support himself. He repeatedly asked Tiffany for financial assistance to maintain his lifestyle. In a moment of despair, Keith even suggested relocating to Ohio, where his grandmother owned a rental property, as a last resort. Despite this, he made it clear he had no desire to leave his children behind. The conversations revealed Keith's deep stress and uncertainty, torn between financial hardship and his love for his children. Tiffany urged them to move on, acknowledging mistakes on both sides, but Keith remained guarded, frustrated by the changes in their lives. He resented Tiffany's new relationship, noting that her only change was sharing her nights with another man, while his life had been upended. Tiffany, in turn, insisted she was happy and challenged Keith to share in that happiness, highlighting the emotional rift growing between them. Text messages uncovered Keith's attempts to negotiate a more stable life in California, requesting a BMW, funds for furniture, and a monthly allowance. He aimed to build a parallel life alongside Tiffany, maintaining a connection with their children. Tiffany claimed to have offered $4,000 monthly, $20,000 up front, and a Range Rover, but both she and Kavy remained dissatisfied with the arrangement. Meanwhile, Keith's cell phone provided crucial clues, tracing his last known movements on the night he disappeared. Between 9:27 and 9:56 p.m., his phone pinged towers near the Millbrae Pancake House where he had been with Tiffany. Shortly after, at 10:49 and 10:56 p.m., the phone's signals shifted toward Hillsborough. This route matched the path Tiffany's Mercedes took after leaving the Pancake House, drawing investigators' attention. Surveillance footage from the intersection of El Camino Real and Millbrae Avenue captured a gray Mercedes G63 heading south around 10:15 p.m. with Tiffany driving. Keith was allegedly in the car with her at that time. However, Tiffany insisted otherwise. She denied Keith's presence in the vehicle, claiming he was not with her despite the phone's movements indicating otherwise. Tiffany expressed confusion, stating she was hearing this information for the first time. She maintained her stance, asserting Keith had not been in her car that night. Adding to the mystery, Keith's phone briefly connected to the Wi-Fi inside Tiffany's Hillsborough mansion at 10:51 p.m. for just 26 seconds. This connection implied the phone was physically close to her home's router, deepening the puzzle. The day Keith's remains were found along a roadside in Geyserville, a SWAT team raided Tiffany's mansion, arresting her and Kavy Byatt on charges of murder. But the investigation did not end with these two. The Hillsborough police had quietly arrested another suspect the day before. They took into custody Olivier Adela, the couple's personal trainer and occasional bodyguard. Olivier Adela, aged 40, originally from the Ivory Coast, also known as Olivier Brandenstein, was soon drawn into this dark saga. He had since become a naturalized citizen of the United States. His online history revealed a stint studying in France and over 5 years of service in the French Foreign Legion. After relocating to America, he found some success as an MMA fighter and later launched a limousine business. It was through this enterprise that he crossed paths with Tiffany Lee and Kaveh Vate. In 2015, Kaveh began employing Adela as a bodyguard for various outings. By the following year, the connection solidified into a more permanent arrangement. Tiffany Lee secured an apartment for Adela and his wife Uta Brandenstein on Trousdale Drive. a property owned by Tiffany's mother, and handed him roughly $13,000 cash for expenses. Uta Brandenstein was reportedly offered a lucrative job within the family business. Adela was also paid an additional salary to train Cavey in kickboxing. But by late February or early March 2016, their business dealings took a sinister turn. Adela recounted being summoned to Cavey's man cave at the Hillsborough residence, subjected to a pat-down search to ensure he wasn't wired, and ordered to place his phone on the counter. The couple then confronted him with a direct, chilling request: eliminate Keith Green. Adela refused to kill, offering only to intimidate Keith. He claimed to have purchased a burner phone to communicate covertly with Cavey about their grim plans. On the night Keith Green vanished, Adela followed Tiffany Lee to a pancake house in a silver Chrysler 300. Contradicting Tiffany's story, Adela stated that around 10 p.m. Cavey texted him that Tiffany and Keith were leaving together in the SUV. Adela trailed behind them in his car. Surveillance captured Adela's vehicle following the Mercedes from the pancake house back toward Hillsborough. Adela maintained that he did not return to the house where the alleged shooting occurred in the garage. Instead, he went back to his apartment. Investigators found a small pool of Keith Green's blood on the garage floor. Gunpowder residue was discovered on a golf bag resting near the bloodstain. Additionally, Keith's blood appeared on the front passenger side running board of the Mercedes. Blood traces and fragments of blue gloves were found between parking spaces 34 and 35 at the apartment complex on Trousdale, where Adela lived. Inside, Adela's Chrysler forensic analysis uncovered traces of Keith Green's blood in the trunk. Transponder records showed Adela's device crossed the Golden Gate Bridge heading south around 3 a.m. on April 29th. He admitted to discarding Keith Green's cell phone out the car window while driving through a park before finding a secluded roadside spot to abandon the body. Adela told police Keith had been stripped down to his socks before the journey. The victim's clothing was packed into a gym bag and later thrown out with the apartment complex's garbage. Neither the clothes nor the murder weapon, a 9mm handgun Adela claimed was procured and used by Cavey Vate, were ever recovered. This deadly plan was orchestrated by Tiffany Lee. While held in custody, Adela spoke to a local reporter, revealing the sordid details of the love triangle and his reluctant role in the murder plot. He described how he was dragged into the scheme against his will. Adela confirmed that Keith Green's friend was involved. He explained that Keith's friend, known as Kobe, met Tiffany through Keith and manipulated her behind Keith's back, turning her against him. Kobe convinced Tiffany to push Keith out of the apartment, moving in himself, and even made Keith's daughter call him daddy, though their relationship lasted only 6 months. Adela recounted how Kathy instructed him to kill Keith Green, demanding Keith be gotten rid of. He clarified that Kelly was the one who wanted Keith eliminated. Adela observed conversations between Tiffany and Keith about the children, then returned home only to be shocked when Tiffany showed up at his building with Keith's dead body in the front seat. They pulled up to the curb with the cab driver in the back seat, Tiffany in the front, and Keith Green, deceased, also in the front seat. Tiffany Lee shocked the nation when she secured a record-breaking $35 million bond. She posted nearly $4 million in cash, bolstered by friends and family who contributed equity and property worth twice the outstanding amount to guarantee her release. California law requires property value to be at least double the cash amount posted for bond. This combined effort amounted to nearly $70 million, securing Tiffany's freedom. Meanwhile, co-defendants Cavey Vate and Olivier Adela remained in custody from the outset. The sheriff's investigation uncovered Tiffany's family had access to hundreds of millions of dollars. 15 to 20 extended family members, friends, and business associates posted property as collateral standing behind Tiffany's promise to appear in court and maintain her innocence. Interruptions aside, Olivier Adela sought a plea deal in exchange for his testimony implicating Tiffany Lee and Cavey Vate. San Mateo district attorneys deliberated on which defendants would face trial for murder under Penal Code Section 187. It came to light that Olivier Adela had repeatedly expressed a desire to negotiate a deal seeking to plead to a lesser charge than murder under Penal Code Section 187. In exchange, he promised truthful testimony against defendants Tiffany Lee and Cavey Vate. Despite these overtures, prosecutors had yet to make a final decision on whether to collaborate with him. At this juncture, all 3 defendants remained charged with murder, with trial proceedings scheduled to begin on January 16th. A narrative emerged suggesting a failed kidnapping rather than a straightforward murder, hinting that events spiraled unexpectedly. Tiffany Lee's defense team painted a picture of a botched abduction orchestrated by Adela and possibly 1 or 2 accomplices, which tragically ended in Keith Green's death. They highlighted a box discovered in Green's apartment containing over $30,000 in cash and an expensive watch that once belonged to him, suggesting robbery was part of the scheme. It appeared that Adela and his associates were in pursuit of a firearm, potentially acquiring one to carry out the kidnapping attempt on Keith Green. Despite these points raised by Tiffany Lee's defense, the district attorney's office struck a deal with Olivier Adela. In February of 2018, the murder charge against Adela was dropped in return for his truthful testimony against Tiffany Lee and Kavi Bayat. More than 2 years passed, with jury selection still pending, prolonging the anticipation of justice. In spring 2019, the trial faced further delay, when it was confirmed that Tiffany Lee required treatment for breast cancer. Meanwhile, Adela's attorneys successfully argued for his release on time served. However, this freedom was short-lived. He was swiftly rearrested by U.S. Diplomatic Security Service agents on charges of making false statements on his passport application. It emerged that Olivier Adela was not his true identity, and much of his history was built on fraud. Investigations revealed that he had migrated from the Ivory Coast to France using a forged French passport under the name Olivier Adela to enter the United States in 2002. Upon arrival, he successfully secured a U.S. passport claiming French citizenship. Shortly after, he married, but his first wife uncovered his deceitful past. She warned others about his violent tendencies, claiming their divorce was never formalized. In a chilling admission, she described living in fear since their separation, recounting threats he made against her and her family. She denied any evidence of his claimed academic achievements, never having seen certificates or paperwork. The question loomed: who was the real Olivier Adela? Known also as Mustafa Traoré, he was exposed as a con artist and a man steeped in dishonesty. Supporters of Keith Green's family voiced a desperate hope that justice would finally be served for the victim and his daughters. They insisted the wrong individuals were on trial. The true pursuit should be directed at Olivier Adela. From the outset, it was clear that the focus should be on him. How the district attorney's office would proceed remained uncertain, but the theory of a kidnapping gone awry persisted. The victim had been found in a trunk with the emergency release latch removed, details that initially supported this theory. Yet this narrative unraveled when Adela was exposed as a liar. His arrest on fraud charges marked the ignominious end of that version of events. Just as trial proceedings for Lee and Bayat were set to begin, new surprises linked to Adela continued to emerge. Twice accusations of witness tampering surfaced tied to the MMA fighter's involvement. While in custody, Adela claimed that a fellow inmate was approached with an offer of money to lie. This inmate was told that Adela had confessed to killing Keith Green alone. Upon hearing of this scheme, Adela confided to his attorney that Mr. Bayat had offered money to the inmate. The offer was allegedly to testify that Adela admitted the murder and that his wife was involved. Prosecutors investigated these claims but found no evidence to support them, leading to no formal action. They did not believe Adela fabricated the story. Yet a second instance of alleged witness tampering could not be dismissed easily. As part of his release conditions, Adela was forbidden from using social media or contacting anyone involved in the case. Despite this, it emerged that he attempted to contact a defense witness, his former girlfriend. It was speculated he sought to learn what she intended to say about him. Adela faced arrest on charges of deception. Olivier Adela, also known as Mustafa Traoré, received an additional 6-month sentence for passport fraud. As the trial for Tiffany Lee and Kavi Bayat was about to begin, unexpected developments involving Adela continued to surface. This breach did not completely unravel his plea agreement. Instead, the district attorney's office chose not to call him as a witness, fearing his credibility would be relentlessly attacked. His testimony carried too many vulnerabilities to withstand cross-examination. The case has twisted and turned through shadows and uncertainty, and it seems certain more surprises lie ahead on this dark journey. Trust in the witness's account was shattered, casting doubt over the entire prosecution. With that loss, the nature of the case transformed into something entirely different. After years of preparation centered around this lead witness, his sudden absence upended everything the prosecution had built. When the trial finally began, Tiffany Lee and Kavi Bayat faced the jury together, their fates intertwined. District Attorney Steve Wagstaff remained resolute, confident in the strength of the state's case, despite the loss of their pivotal witness. He acknowledged the case partly rested on Mustafa Traoré's testimony, though defense attorney Jeff Carr insisted the case depended solely on Traoré. Wagstaff disagreed. He deferred to the 12 jurors, trusting them to weigh the evidence and deliver a verdict. The trial commenced in September 2019. Despite the prosecution's claim that the murder occurred in the Hillsborough garage, investigators found no bullet holes or shell casings. Only a trace amount of gunshot residue was discovered, dismissed by defense experts as insignificant. Experts testified the residue on a golf bag was inconsistent with a gun having been fired nearby. Mustafa Traore claimed that Keith Green had already been shot and was bleeding inside the Mercedes when Tiffany arrived. Yet exhaustive searches revealed no blood or DNA evidence inside the vehicle. The only blood linked to Keith was a tiny droplet found on the exterior passenger running board of the Mercedes. Defense attorneys explained this was a car Keith had frequently been near, making the blood droplet explainable by innocent contact. Such a small trace could easily be dismissed as unrelated. Cell phone data placing Keith with Tiffany was challenged by surveillance footage showing Traore's car tailing closely. This suggested Keith might have already been alive, concealed in the Chrysler's trunk. The brief connection of Keith's phone to the house Wi-Fi only proved the device had passed near the router, perhaps simply driven past. Crucial circumstantial evidence hinted strongly that Mustafa Traore was involved. Keith may have been transported alive in the Chrysler only to be abandoned later in Hillsborough. A friend of Tiffany's recounted dining with her on the night Keith vanished around 6 or 6:30 p.m. at the Cheesecake Factory. Tiffany had told this friend she planned to meet Keith later that evening. Around 10 p.m., Tiffany called again, describing the meeting's events in detail. She revealed that Keith wanted to reconcile and warned that Cavi Byatt was bad for her, even alleging an unwanted kiss. Tiffany said she left Keith at the Pancake House. This narrative matched exactly what she had told the police. The prosecution's case against Cavi Byatt was tied closely to the crime theory laid out by Traore. Yet the murder weapon supposedly obtained by Cavi was never identified. The burner phones allegedly used to coordinate the crime were also never recovered. Prosecutors pointed to a pair of Keith's shoes, said to have been worn at the Pancake House and found in Cavi's man cave, but this evidence was far from conclusive. When the jury first returned to the courtroom, they had reached a verdict on only one defendant. In a dramatic moment, 31-year-old Tiffany Lee was spotted rushing out of the Redwood City Courthouse. The real estate heiress had been acquitted of murdering the father of her children. Her family had posted a staggering $35 million bail to keep her out of jail during the trial. Immediately after her release, Tiffany Lee left the country without hesitation. A close acquaintance with 6 years of history with Tiffany described her as pure evil. They claimed she harbored malice towards them personally. Her cruelty extended even to their son. In their eyes, she was simply evil. Meanwhile, the jury struggled longer to decide on Cavi Byatt's fate. Unable to reach agreement, the jury declared a mistrial. Weeks later, prosecutors conceded they would not pursue a retrial against Cavi. They doubted another jury would convict based on the same evidence presented. After 3 years in custody, Cavi Byatt was finally freed. Asked about his feelings, he expressed relief and happiness. The critical question was whether he would face a new trial. After careful consideration, the decision was clear. No retrial would take place. It was concluded that nothing would change in a new trial. Ultimately, he was never guilty of the crime. District Attorney Wagstaff had believed the evidence proved Tiffany Lee and Cavi Byatt were responsible for Keith Green's death. Yet the jury's verdict told a different story, demonstrating the system's workings. As it stood, no one would be held accountable for Keith Green's murder. The evidence had ultimately fallen short. Those who had fought tirelessly for justice now had to rely on karma and the haunting truth that the perpetrators must live with their actions. Upon his release, Mustafa Traore, also known as Olivier Adela Brandenstein, addressed the media with unexpected focus on his MMA fighting career. He revealed a denied request to travel to Las Vegas for a fight that could have earned him $250,000. Traore was eager to discuss his fighting prospects, but remained silent on his alleged role in Keith Green's murder. At 43 years old, he insisted there was still a market for MMA fighters his age. The conversation revealed a cold calculation, an insistence that everything must be commercialized, that the fight must be sold to the public without hesitation. This was not just about survival, but about packaging a story, making it marketable. Despite claims of maintaining strength, doing dozens of push-ups daily, the grim truth was far darker. Keith Green's friends and family searched desperately for him, unaware that Tiffany Lee held the knowledge of his whereabouts and the tragic fate that had befallen him. At one point, Tiffany suggested it was time to leave a sign of evasion. Yet when pressed why she hadn't alerted authorities before Keith Green's death, silence fell, her refusal to speaking volumes. Her repeated claims of inability to discuss the matter met with firm interruption, the investigators refusing to let the truth slip away. In a tense exchange, Tiffany Lee's reticence clashed with the demand for answers. Meanwhile, Keith Green's mother, Colleen, moved forward with a wrongful death lawsuit, standing resolute for herself and her granddaughters. By early 2023, a settlement had quietly been reached. Now, living in China with her daughters, Tiffany attributed the backlash against her to xenophobia and anti-Asian sentiment, vehemently opposing the public disclosure of the settlement's details. Yet a year later, the court ruled otherwise, permitting the lawsuit's contents to surface. The agreement required Tiffany to pay Colleen $100,000 with an additional $5 million allotted to each of her 2 daughters. Colleen expressed relief that the settlement secured a financial future for her granddaughters, ensuring they would have autonomy when they reached adulthood, free from their mother's control. This financial independence might also open the door for future contact with the Green family. Colleen was clear the money was intended solely for the children's benefit. It came at no cost to the Lee family, as the girls were Tiffany's sole heirs. They represented Tiffany's only legacy. Tiffany Lee sought to reclaim her life, to bury the past and move forward. Her focus was to raise her daughters and try to live normally once again. Thus closed the tragic chapter of Keith Green's life. Thank you for following this story to the end. Special gratitude goes to Joe Weaver, Amy Mott, Cedric Scott, and Catherine Wellington for their support in our members' lounge. And to Kat, if you are watching, we sincerely hope you return to the UK soon. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold truths.